A very good morning to everyone present here today. My name is Anindita Halder. I am a Ph.D. student at the Department of Linguistics, University of Calcutta, and the title of my paper presentation today is Rhyme and Rhetoric, a reading of Satyajit Ray's English translations of Upendrakishore Chowdhury's Folktales. The magazine Shokha was founded in 1883, and from the U. Ray and Sons Press, the magazine Sandesh, whose title was a wordplay on the famous Bengali sweet name and its homonym Sandesh meaning message, was published in 1913. Satyajit Ray revived the magazine again in 1961 for children. In one of his essays, Satyajit Ray remembers his grandfather's writings and talks about the indispensable relationship between form and language he found in his works. Retranslated for the English children's magazine Target in 1984, the three stories, Tuntuni আর রাজার কথা, Narahari Das, and Kunjo Burir কথা in English. There was a later translation of Dushtu Bagh, an animal fable titled The Tiger in the Cage. These tales were already popular in Bengali households through the eponymous collection Tuntunir Boi, the Tale About Book, which was first published in 1910 alongside Upendrakishore Chowdhury's original illustrations. If one is to look at folk tales, specifically beast fables, the following features are found common in both the Eastern and the Western canon. Anthropomorphic characters exist in the psychological realms of childlike naivete, of mature wisdom, and of adult wickedness. The language of beast fables become representational, often referential, and definitely symbolic, and the perception of the adult narrator or the storyteller regarding some kind of moral or ethical lesson to be imparted to the child becomes crucial to the beast fables. Folk literature for children has another name for these tales, which is the trickster tales. It is through the cunningness or smartness of the trickster that the protagonist gets out of difficult situations or lives are saved in the end. Often satire or social realism is hidden with the language of humor in such folktales. Now, some of the ways in which fantastic literature or supernatural literature can be read is to look at the cultural values, the ethnic differences, and the allegory which is present in the story. Kimberly Reynolds points out how even in nonsense verse written for children, the destabilizing of meaning, the ignorance towards grammatical rules, can create in the child reader's mind a question about the self and the new world which is created through the pages. Therefore, the role of the intermediary, the person who is telling the story or reading the content, the text, becomes important. Children's books readers are often adults who translate or transcreate the books for them in the form of a discourse relevant to a particular time or place. So the interpretation of any children's work becomes a personal as well as a codependent activity. If the collective ancestral psyche of quotidian proverbs and domestic folk tales can be seen as the repertoire of intergenerational memories, music, and poetic axioms to be passed on, then Satyajit Ray's translations add much value to the regional tales of Tuntunir Boi by transcreating them in an altogether new age. Ray here is both the reader and the storyteller, because as a child he read the stories in Bengali written by his grandfather, and as an adult he revisits the books and tries to interpret them in his own language for another generation. So he holds a very unique position. His lucid style therefore becomes crucial for self-expression. The child reader's response is therefore dependent on language, the discovery that the child makes through language acquisition, and therefore meaning making goes hand in hand with understanding the symbolism of the tales. The easy conversational style of the fables, the supplementing of human characteristics into birds and animals, the juxtapositioning of Bengal's domestic and wildlife, all add to the creation of this fantastic world. Ray, as a translator, adapts certain figures of speech from the mother tongue into English while maintaining the creative humor of the stories. The stories are built on embedded morals, and the engaging language thrives on both the imaginative and the entertaining. Keeping the indigenous names and setting intact, Ray carefully translates the rhetorical wordplay and rhymes in the narratives. In the next few slides, I am going to be looking at the four tales and how Ray maintains the musicality of the verses. In the first story, Tuntuniya Rajar Kotha, the bird sings, Raja বড় ধন কাতর, টুনির ধন নীলে বাড়ির ভিতর. The English translation reads, The king must be very needy if my silver makes him greedy. In both the Bengali and the English versions, the bird talks about itself in the third person. This is a style which is reflective of a self-conscious pride that the speaker takes while talking about its achievements. Other examples like, what the king has in his chest, Toonie too has in her nest. When clever Toonie so disposes, 7 queens lose 7 noses. Go on to highlight Toonie's self-importance as the protagonist of the tale. We have to remember here that Toonie is part of the trickster tale tradition, and eventually the bird proves to be more clever than all the courtiers of the king and the king himself. In the story, certain onomatopoeic words are used like thop thop, chup chup, and these are translated in English by Ray. Certain Bengali repetitions and double rhymes, which are often used as colloquialisms like dhor dhor, chotpot, are also replaced by their English equivalents. But there is a certain onomatopoeic word which is left untranslated by Ray, and that is the word whack, which denotes disgust, and the gag reflex in Bengali. In the next story, Narahari Das, especially in the verses which the title character sings, the use of end rhymes is maintained. For example, beard is rhymed with feared, das with grass, done with one. Again, in the lines, I dine on 50 tigers while others eat grass, the use of antithesis is done where two opposing ideas are placed side by side to emphasize one basic truth. When Narahari Das, the little goat, talks about itself in hyperbolic terms, we find that the ending of the rhyme achieves a ludicrous effect, causing amusement with the help of the figure of speech anticlimax. So when the protagonist sings, I paid for 10 tigers and you have brought only one, suddenly, from a very serious note, the ending of the lines bring relief to the readers as one realizes that the little goat has outwitted the tiger. Equivalents of certain Bengali colloquialisms are also used in the English translation. For example, the very regional manner of addressing to the tiger as Mama Bagh is translated as Uncle Tiger. Also, the manner of repeating certain words as Rakhush Takhush is translated as some kind of a monster, leaving scope for imagination by the author. The exclamatory phrase "বটে তার বড় আস্পর্ধা" is translated as "what cheek". The word "bote", which loosely means "indeed" or "is that so" in Bengali, simply replaced by the exclamatory mark. In the story The Bent Old Woman, Ray uses a lot of sense translations. The phrase "Kujo Buri" is replaced by the term "old hag", where hag is a word frequently found in the Western canon of folk tales referring to old women or witches with wrinkled skin. Similarly, Lauer Khol is translated as empty pumpkin, its near equivalent, and the onomatopoeic word tok tok is replaced by wobble. The refrain of 4 lines, pumpkin, pumpkin, roll along, keep on rolling all the way, eat your pickles, sing your song, skin and bones is miles away, is twice repeated to mimic the long distance of the bent old woman's journey. There is a certain pictorial quality in these verses, as the crookedness of the bent lady enables her to curl up inside a hollow pumpkin and save her life. The use of assonance and alliteration is also found in the lines, with the repetition of the P sound, the R sound, the S sound, and the repetition of the vowel sound O. In folk tales and in children's literature, poems are often used to make the story memorable and musical for the listeners. In the story The Tiger in the Cage or Dushtu Bagh, the use of the rhetorical question is done to arrive at the moral of the story. If you did somebody a good turn, would he turn around and do you a bad one? 3 witnesses are called to answer this question. The use of the literary device personification is also done, as the banyan tree and the owl are both personified from non-living entities. The word owl is left untranslated in the English version, which basically means the raised platform to walk on between two fields of crop. Adding Mr. to the word owl helps to give it a humanized form. The final moral of the story, never do a bad person a good turn, is worded in the manner of parallelism, where a similar word order is used in order to convey a basic truth. In this story, the use of wordplay is done by an intentional misuse of grammar by the wily fox. The two lines, "the Brahmin was inside the cage and the tiger on the street outside," and "the tiger was inside the Brahmin and the cage was walking on the street," are examples of nonsense writing, but still it is done with a motive where fox tricks the tiger into trying to prove its point and walking into the cage at the end. So the use of nonsense writing is done intentionally to add humor to the story. In conclusion, Satyajit Ray carefully constructs a mirror narrative of the Bengali stories, translating both prose and verse while keeping the symbolism intact. The imagery employed by Upendrakishore presents a slice of quintessential Bengali life in the 20th century. For Ray, who never saw his grandfather and barely remembered his father, the act of translation was not only a way of preserving the family memories, but of documenting the wisdom of a collective Bengali ancestry. The translated stories in English gave new life to the repertoire of children's literature hailing from India, as they served another purpose of introducing regional folk tales to the world. Through this study of Ray's English translations of the Bengali folk tales, it can be summarized that the narrative voice acts as a moderator to the implied child reader, and through an adept use of onomatopoeic words, alliteration, consonants, metrical wordplay, and idiomatic phrases, the language of the narrative successfully achieves a visual, oral, and kinesthetic quality integral to any children's work of amusement. Thank you.